It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at FITLABPGH. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLab Pittsburgh, as you heard in the intro, is a podcast that promotes movement and movement opportunities in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Along with our sister podcast, Moving to Live, we firmly believe and meet the ethos that movement is a lifestyle, not just an activity. We're actually recording this on April 2nd, and unlike most of our FitLab PGH podcasts, we are not meeting face-to-face. But I know this is going to be a good interview because today's guest, we were originally scheduled to meet at a coffee shop in Sewickley. And for those of you who are long-term listeners of FitLab Pittsburgh, you know that my cue is if it's in a coffee shop, it has never not been a good interview. However, April 2nd, 2020, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, we are in social distancing, stay-at-home orders for most of the counties in the area. And our guest today was generous enough to say, well, let's hop on and talk about this by Zoom. So she is our second Zoom interview. Shout out to Menachem Brody for being our first Zoom interview. And Lindsay is the founder of the Women's Adventure Club. I think it's especially important in this day and age with the social distancing and people not being able to get to their gyms to understand the importance of the outdoors. And I think Lindsay has a really interesting story. I know I, for one, want to find out how one moves from Alaska to the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. Lindsay Gibson, thank you for taking time to talk to FitLab Pittsburgh.
You're welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
So we know from following you on social media that you are the founder of the Women's Adventure Club. We always like to ask people that we interview for FitLab Pittsburgh, are you a Pittsburgh native? Which I kind of suspect from reading the things you aren't. And if you're not a Pittsburgh native, how the heck did you end up in Pittsburgh?
No, I'm not a Pittsburgh native. I was born in the Bay Area near San Francisco, California, and then moved back east when I was a young girl. My father worked for Bethlehem Steel, so we kind of moved around to different steel towns. We lived in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania for about 6 years, Memphis, Tennessee for a year and a half, Johnstown, so I was getting closer to Pittsburgh at that point, Johnstown, Pennsylvania for 3 years, and then Hershey, Pennsylvania is where I ended up graduating from high school. And then I went to college and then ended up back in Hershey, where I was an elementary school teacher for about 12 years. And then in 2011, my husband's job took us to Anchorage, Alaska, a place I never expected to live, but boy, I loved it. It was a life-changing experience. So we were there 7 years. They were magical. And then his job took us here, where he's working at the Penn Chemicals cracker plant, as people call it, in Monaca. And so that was a big switch going, from Alaska to Pittsburgh. I'm curious,
having spent a significant amount of time in Hershey, do you miss the smell of chocolate when you're now living in other areas?
Gosh, I was just telling someone the other day that when I would bring the children out to recess And the chocolate factory was still there at that point, and it would always smell like chocolate. Our school was just a couple blocks up from the factory, but the factory's gone now, so the town, it looks different. It was a neat place to live.
I'm always curious with people that we interview for FitLab Pittsburgh, and I know Women's Adventure Club, you clearly like to spend time outdoors and you clearly like to move, but were you an active kid growing up? And if you were an active kid, was it because mom and dad said, get the heck out of the house? Or was it because you played organized sports? Or did you find movement and being active outdoors later in life?
I always loved, playing. I was in a few organized sports. I never really excelled at any one of them. I played tennis with my dad, soccer. I did track in high school. I loved to swim. I think for me, it was less about the competition and more about the social part of it, who I was with, especially, things like being with my dad. I mean, I didn't care really what I was doing as long as I could be with him. And somehow food was always involved. Like, let's ride our bike and get ice cream, or let's go play tennis because the hot dogs that they sell at the stand are so good. So not sure how healthy that is, but that was part of my
Well, I know I was interviewing somebody for Moving to Live, Dr. E, who's the gentleman who is a physician, is in Spain right now. He talks about his wife is from Spain, and people always say, well, you have ice cream every day for dessert. He said, but what they don't take into account is you walk 6,000 steps from your house to the ice cream parlor. You have one small scoop and you walk 6,000 steps back. So the hot dogs or the ice cream that you got with your dad, it probably wasn't hop in the car or hop in the minivan. It was more along the lines, we have to walk or we have to ride our bikes. And then you get that as a reward. That's
right. I think exercising in nature is something that came later. Although looking back, you find your passions as an adult, and you look back at your childhood and you can say, they were always there. Because I used to love playing in the woods with my sister when I was little. And I just, those same feelings are still there when I go out into the woods now for a long hike or a cross-country ski or a mountain bike.
And I know from looking at the Women's Adventure Club webpage and Facebook page, you lead a variety of outdoor movement activities. How long have you been doing a variety of outdoor movement activities? Was this something that you started when you got to Alaska and you said, there's all these opportunities? Or was it when you were younger, living in different parts of Pennsylvania, Hershey, as a working adult?
I think, as you evolve, as I've evolved, different activities have come into my life. So kind of according to place. So when we're in California, where my parents live, we surf and we hike by the ocean. And when we were in Alaska, winter was long. We had 5 to 6 months of winter, and I was not a downhill skier. I never had Nordic skied before moving to Alaska. I never snowshoed before. And so I thought I better learn how to do these things. And they end up being my favorite ways to be outside. And most of these things I learned in my late 30s, which was a huge, an important part of learning for me, is that, don't be afraid to try something just because you think of yourself as being old. It's really never too late to go outside your comfort zone and try something new.
I think that's well put. I know a good friend of mine did his first Ironman triathlon when he was 44 or 45, and he's 66 now, and he said he can't just imagine a day or a week where he doesn't go for a bike ride or go for a run. And I think you hit on it a few minutes ago. Moving and being outside, there's just something to it. I know there's forest bathing and there's nature baths and things like that. So I'm always curious when I talk to people who are movers, is there a favorite movement activity that you have? Like if you have a free day or free week and somebody says, Lindsay, hey, you can go do anything you want. Cost isn't an object. What's the favorite movement activity that you have?
It's hard to pick. I think hiking. I love Nordic skiing, but our winters are not very conducive to that here. In Alaska, it was definitely Nordic skiing. Here, I think it's hiking. It's accessible to everybody. There are so many great trails and parks around the Pittsburgh area. You can get out there regardless of your age and to some extent what kind of physical shape you're in. You can do easy hikes or you can do really long all day hikes where there's a lot of elevation gain. and you're in the trees. And I did a hike on Tuesday where it was in Bear Run Nature Preserve down near Falling Water. And at one point I stopped and could not hear one man-made sound. It was just complete silence. So I think hiking really allows you to get away and kind of get out of your head and just take in all the joys of nature.
I can understand that. We do movement tip and lifestyle hacks in FitLab Pittsburgh where there are videos. And I know when I go back and I watch the videos, very often I've surprised at all the nature sounds that I missed. So it really reminds me when you're out there, that babbling brook, the sounds of the birds, that if you don't pay attention, you miss that. And that's part of the real thrill. And I've told a couple of people this week, one of the things that if I was an indoor exerciser, I never would have been able to see is about a year ago, when I was in my local park with my dogs, there'd been a lot of rain. I got to see 3 deer swim across a stream, one of them being taken out or taken down with the current and kind of ride the current, kind of like a kayaker does till they hit an eddy. And all 3 hop up on the bank and shake like a dog. Oh, and one of the cool things about that is I actually had my phone with me, so I have a video of it. And that to me, having exercised literally all over the world, that is one of the coolest things I've ever seen, which I never would have gotten if I didn't go outside.
Right. Oh, that's so cool.
So I'm curious, my other 2 favorite questions to ask people for FitLab Pittsburgh is most interesting or unusual or fun or conversational starting movement activity that you've done in the past, and would you do it again?
Oh, okay. So is this the question from the questionnaire that was like our least favorite, or
this is wide open to it could be your least favorite, your most favorite. To give you an idea, I've had everything from I took a yoga class once, it was enough, to I rode my bike across the country. So this is really, you're hanging out with a bunch of your friends and they're saying, well, I did this. And you said, well, I did that. Whether it's good or bad, it's just kind of something interesting as a conversation piece.
Okay. So I have a daughter who's 25 years old. I had her when I was 20. So I always tell people she's my favorite, what I did over winter breaks story from college. And when she was 20 and I was 40, we were in Kauai together and we kayaked the Nepali coast of Kauai, which was definitely outside of my comfort zone. I was a little hesitant when I saw the size of the waves, and it's like a 14, 15 mile paddle. In some pretty treacherous areas, but we did it, and it was probably one of the most extraordinary experiences I've had, and I got to experience it with my daughter. So that was just, that was lovely. Probably one of my favorite things I've ever done.
And kind of as a follow-up to that, would you do it again?
I would, but I'd have to talk myself into it because it was hard.
I think one of the things of people who have not spent time on the water, either the ocean or whitewater, it's one of those things in nature where you're kind of a few minutes in it and all of a sudden you realize this is bigger than me. So my second favorite question, I think, to ask people on FitLab Pittsburgh as far as movement things, any movement things on your bucket list or movement things that you say, at some point I'm going to do this. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I'm going to definitely do it at some point. Yes.
I would really love to hike the John Muir Trail. Being a California native, I love the Sierras. I love John Muir's writing, and I was actually born in John Muir Hospital. So I feel like that's something I have to do, whether it's all of it or part of it. And I have some really outdoorsy friends from Alaska, and I'd love to do it with them. They're all women. They've all had all kinds of incredible experiences in the backcountry. So I'd love to experience that with them.
And I'll show my ignorance here and put you on the spot. How long is the John Muir Trail?
Gosh, I don't know how long it is. I mean, 150 miles. I'm not sure. Maybe longer.
We're talking with Lindsay Gibson. She is the founder of the Women's Adventure Club. I'm curious, Lindsay, clearly you're an outdoor mover. What was the impetus to say, I'm going to start a Women's Adventure Club? And actually, before we get to the impetus, what is the Women's Adventure Club?
The Women's Adventure Club is an organization for women who want more outdoor experiences in their lives. And I founded it because of my experience in Alaska. I think that being outdoors, recreating in the outdoors with women of all different ages was something that really has contributed to my sense of well-being, my level of confidence, how brave I feel. And it created such a profound change in me. And I just really wanted to share that opportunity with other women. And when I got to Pittsburgh, and I kind of sensed that the outdoor recreation wasn't as quite as instilled in everyone as it is in Alaska. And I thought I could bring a little bit of that Alaska spirit here and get these ladies outdoors. And it's been wonderful to see.
I think as somebody who's not a Pittsburgh native, I may steal that line. It's not instilled in people. I think those of us who spend a lot of time outdoors and have spent a lot of time outdoors for a number of years kind of forget that that's abnormal for some people. The idea of, well, I've got a free afternoon. Why don't I go for a hike? I know for me, when I was in grad school, I was in Norfolk, Virginia, and I learned that there was the Great Dismal Swamp and that there was an 8-mile road or trench or ditch actually that went to a giant lake. And of course, my first thought was, I'm going to run there and see what this giant brackish lake looks like. And I did it. And I still remember telling my classmates about it. And they kind of looked at me and they go, why would you do that? So I think something that instills people or makes people recognize, wow, this is something that's out there. And I know I've talked on other podcasts for FitLab Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh really has some phenomenal outdoor opportunities ranging from hiking to biking to where within 2 hours of some of the best kayaking. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I say this semi-jokingly, semi-seriously, because so many people in Pittsburgh don't want to go across a bridge or go through a tunnel. So I think anything that makes it easier rather than saying, oh, wow, there's this neat hike, up in the North Hills, but I live in the South Hills. You're more likely to do it if there's somebody saying, hey, I'll be leading a hike. And by the way, I'm going to show you this new butterfly species, or it's the season when this particular wildflower is out, and I'll show you how to identify it. I think that has the potential to really attract more individuals.
Yeah, and I think people are just busy and they might want to get outside more, but they don't have the time or take the time to research a park and find a trail, and they might worry about the navigation part and how long does it take and how hard is it. And so I can answer all those questions and plan everything. And really all the women have to do is decide they want to come, and I do all the work, and they just have to show up. So it's very easy. It's an easy way to get outside.
I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyways. Do you think you're at the point, or you will be at the point at some point, where you'll run out of potential adventures to go on in the Pittsburgh area?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, we haven't run out yet. And then there's still so many I'd like to explore. I'm actually using this coronavirus time to explore more on my own. So that's kind of been the thing that's keeping me going during this time is finding new trails for the ladies.
I know we were chatting for a few minutes before we started recording. I mentioned my girlfriend and I are essentially week 3 of social distancing and staying at home other than the grocery store. And one of the things, I don't know if I should be surprised, but that surprised me is that so many people aren't sure what to do in regards to movement because their local fitness facilities have shut down. And that's why, even though we weren't able to meet in person, I thought this was important because people can listen and recognize, I may not be an outside person. I may be a city person, or I may be somebody who it just wasn't part of my upbringing where my dad played tennis with me or took me for a bike ride. But I can learn from somebody. And as you said a few minutes ago, you were 38 or 39 when you moved to Alaska and you learned all these outdoor activities. Like, wow, this is kind of really cool.
Yeah, I think especially during this time when people are probably very stressed and very anxious, and when you're moving in the outdoors, it really, you downshift from the prefrontal cortex part of your brain to this, and you experience the soft fascination where you're very engaged with your surroundings because you're listening and seeing and feeling. So your mind is thinking about the sensory, the senses of everything, and not worrying or ruminating. And after time spent in nature, you experience decreased anxiety. There are chemicals that are released that act as antidepressants and anti-anxiety. So you're kind of, it's like you're creating a little pharmacy in your body to help you with all of these things that we're probably experiencing right now.
I know I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago, and he had a really good analogy for why moving outside, I hesitate to call it exercise, and I suspect you'd agree, because even when you're hiking up a mountain, you look up and say, oh wow, look at that hawk that's going, or look at that cool tree. But he said one of the things of exercising outside in nature versus inside, or even in a busy city, is the fact that when you're places where there's all kinds of different stimuli, there's this low level noise or stress that's always there. And I would suspect that if you get some new outdoor adventurers with you, one of the first things that they're amazed about is, at first, how quiet the outdoors is. Mm-hmm. And then when you're there a little bit longer, how many different sounds there are that not necessarily noisy, but maybe you hear this the wild turkeys, or you hear the breeze rustling, or if you listen, it's like, oh, wow, I bet over that hill there's a stream. Have you had any people who've come who haven't been regular outdoor movers who they comment on this?
They do. And what's neat about recreating in the outdoors, the runner's high, and that, you have to run for quite a while to experience that. But in nature, you can start feeling the positive effects of being outside in just the first 5 minutes. And when we first get out on the trail with the women, I always hear these big sighs of kind of relief, like all the angst in them is just pouring out of their bodies. And they stop and they look at the patterns, the patterns in leaves or ferns. We hear the birds. Of course, they always love the sounds of water, whether it be a little babbling brook or like in McConnell's Mill. That's just the force of the water is so strong there. So they love, they love it.
We're talking with Lindsay Gibson. She is the founder of the Women's Adventure Club. Obviously, with COVID-19, the various adventures are a little bit on hold or hiatus, but people who are listening to this may be thinking this sounds like a great opportunity to find new activities, new ways to explore the Pittsburgh area, but maybe they're a little bit nervous. I know the first yoga class I went to, I kind of wasn't sure what to expect. The first triathlon I ever showed up, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do. So somebody who's listening to this, a woman who's listening to this, say, take a hike, for example. How long are they? What's the requirement for what they bring? Somebody's listening going, convince me that I want to go, but I have a little bit of anxiety and not sure what to do.
Sure. On my website, I always spell it out, how many miles it is, if it's easy, moderate, strenuous. I actually have an activity rating scale based on elevation gain, length of time, what the trail's like. And so I will rate each activity so that helps them out. And also going to my Instagram page, I have each adventure listed on there. So if people are curious about, what kind of adventures have these women had, they can go on and see, how long the hike was, or we've done other things like snowshoeing, bike riding. We did skeet shooting. We were going to do axe throwing until the coronavirus came up, but hopefully we'll get to that eventually. But you know what? One of my favorite things is that we cater to a range of ages. So I think our youngest was probably in her mid-30s. And while I don't ask their age, I think we've gone up to 70s. So I love that. I love that we've attracted a range of ages. And on the last hike, we had a woman who was recovering from a double lung transplant. And it was hard for her, but boy, she did it. And we were all so proud of her. And she was proud of herself. How life-changing. So I think it's a range of ages, a range of levels. We do easy hikes up until, long, maybe 7 or 8 mile hikes are our longest hikes.
I'll put something on your radar to potentially do when things settle down. If you haven't taken a group to do the Go Ape High Ropes course in North Park, that is really a lot of fun. It's a little bit scary, but it's also because you are roped in and carabinered in. It's safe, and you finish and you look up and go, that was a really cool experience.
Oh, that is on my list. in April, this month, we were supposed to do a mountain bike clinic at the Wheel Mill in Pittsburgh, taught by Karen Brooks. So I was really looking forward to that. So hopefully we can reschedule. And Karen was also going to teach an outdoor mountain bike clinic in the Montour Woods on those trails, which are just so fun. So hopefully we can reschedule that. Axe throwing we were going to do. I've had a couple requests to do the skeet shooting again. The ladies really love that. So that was neat. I'd also like to take them to the Laurel Highlands and do some really longer hikes, like 9-10 mile hikes, and to get out of Pittsburgh, especially. There's just some beautiful areas over there.
I know some people are listening. They may saying, well, can I bring my boyfriend or can I bring my dog?
I've had that question. We're pretty new. I started at last September, and we've done, I think, just one hike where husbands and family members could come. It was National Trails Day, so that was fun. I think I'll do that every once in a while, where a woman can bring whoever she wants to bring. But I think there is something special about it being all women. It's very comfortable. It feels very safe. The conversations we have are deep and meaningful. Something happens out there on the trail where you just kind of drop all of your cares, and it feels easy to be vulnerable out on the trail. So I kind of want to protect that. And dogs, it depends on the park rules. And I have one member who had a traumatic dog experience. So if she comes, then I say no dogs.
I know it's interesting. You say people, in essence, drop their guard when they're walking along. We interviewed Dr. Justin Berthold a couple of years back, and his mentor taught him or made him aware of, sometimes when working with patients, he's a physical medicine physician, sometimes he goes for a walk with them. He said, it's sometimes a lot easier to have a difficult conversation when you're walking along as opposed to when you're sitting across the desk or you and I looking at each other through Zoom, because you can say things and nobody's looking at you, because if they look at you, they may fall flat on their butt. Right.
You're just kind of putting the words out into the air. And I find the same.
I think a nice way to finish this up, we are in the middle of social distancing and stay-at-home order. Other than right now we're able to exercise, maybe one or two suggestions for people where they can get some outdoor time but still maintain their social distancing from what you've seen, since you clearly have maintained your outdoor activities since this social distancing started.
Sure. There's a couple of great apps. I like the All Trails app. It's free. You just go on and it will tell you trails near you. You can read reviews. You can also record yourself hiking on the trail. So you're a little blue dot moving along a trail. You can see where you are on the trail, and then you can find out how to go back. So I love that one. REI has a hiking app. They also have a mountain bike app, which are great. They're the DCNR website. It's the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. They have trail maps for many of our parks, like McConnell's Mill, Moraine State Park, Raccoon Creek, and many others. So that's a great asset. Also, Facebook, there's a page I belong to. It's called, Hiking and Backpacking Pennsylvania. And while some of the information is for different parts of Pennsylvania, every once in a while, someone will ask a question like favorite trails near Pittsburgh, and you'll get, 50 responses. And I'm always surprised about the trails I learn, just from other people recommending them. So that's a great place. There's another Facebook group called Hiker Babes. So sorry, that's for women also. And that is a group that you can join, and sometimes you can just see where they go. And like my Instagram page, I always put the geotag so people can see where we go and go there themselves. Those would be my recommendations.
We've been talking with Lindsay Gibson. She is the founder of the Women's Adventure Club. We will have extensive show notes for that variety of links that she had. And fingers crossed that in the next couple of months, you'll be able to get back to leading hikes and return to skeet shooting. Lindsay, thank you for taking time to talk to FitLab Pittsburgh about movement in the Women's Adventure Club.
Oh, thank you, Ben. I was happy to do it.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at FitLabPGH@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at FitLabPGH and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.